How are you, man, anyway?
I'm really good. Spring is like officially underway on the east coast of Canada. So I've been riding dirt bikes, and I just got my street bike fired up for the first time, like literally minutes before. I just like rode back and came inside and like jumped on this interview. I thought it was going to have a dead battery or like bad gas. So I was really happy to just jump on and go for a quick.
Sounds like life is good in Liam world then.
Yeah, we also literally just got back from a crazy like sold out tour with Comeback Kid and Misery Signals across like Western Canada, where like all the shows were just nuts and people going off and having an amazing time. So I feel like I'm like riding a real high right now.
And the album just dropped, so that's been out a few weeks. How's the reception been to that? Because it's been a few years since the last one.
Yeah, so the last thing we did was Spark That Moves in 2018. So it's definitely been, a good, like solid 4 years. But I feel like that record had such a good response that, again, we had kind of like, okay, like we know like what we're doing. So this record, the response has been amazing, especially to like the first singles, like Psychic Jailbreak, Lonely Bong, those ones that we put out and like made videos for, and then we're playing them live and like people know the words and are partying. Even though it's only been out for a couple of weeks, it definitely, it feels amazing.
And obviously this is a slightly different album for you guys because of Scott. So when you started like first putting this record together, how did things change from how you've done them before?
That's kind of why I like first hesitated, because I was like, it's slightly different, but in a lot of ways it was the same process that we were working on Spark That Moves. So again, because the band is sort of split up, like we have, people living in different cities. We also have like, Mike and Scott have kids. So it was sort of like we've been doing things a little bit different for the last few years anyways, where Jay and lots of times myself will start a lot of the songs. So he'll play guitar, I'll play drums, and we'll just get the ball rolling. And then for Mike and Scott, they can just add their own parts like on top of it. And then it becomes a Cancer Bat song. So with this album, we were kind of like, okay, cool. Like it worked with Spark. Let's do the same thing. Like Jay had lots of ideas on guitar. So we were just writing songs. Like it was just, kind of business as usual. The only difference is, again, we couldn't actually physically get together. So we were just sending stuff over the internet. I live in Halifax now. So it was like me sending stuff to Jay. Jay would then send stuff back. We'd send stuff to Mike. We knew that Scott was busy. We knew that he had moved and that he was opening up a new studio. So we were like, oh, okay, like Scott's just going to add his parts, when he has time. And especially considering he had a studio, that we were like, oh, you're just going to like lay down your guitar or whatever idea you have on top of it. So again, we were just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like we're doing our thing. And then, so when Scott told us he was going to step away from the band, we were already like, oh, well, we've already written probably 70% of this record at this point. So we were like, let's just keep going. And like, we knew we were going to record with JP already. We knew that we were going to be in Winnipeg to do it. We already had Eric Ratz lined up to mix. Harry has to master it. So it was sort of like everything was in place the exact same way that we had it for the Spark That Moves. And the spark was still moving. So it was, in a lot of ways, it's kind of what made for everything being as like chill and as cool as it was with Scott leaving. Like we were like, yeah, man, we know you're busy and you obviously have this stuff going on. And he was like, yeah, no, I don't want to hold you guys back. Like he was like, these songs rip. Like we had written, Friday Night, Crocodiles, Lonely Bong. We had written a lot of the like songs that are, kind of the standout tracks already. And so he was like, this stuff's already ripping. Like I would just be adding, whatever to it. So we're just like, okay, cool. See you later.
So I've seen you guys multiple times, pretty much all in the UK.
Oh, okay.
So I can't even remember the first show that I saw of yours. And I also saw a Bat Sabbath show
Oh, sick.
In Birmingham, the home of Black Sabbath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which was amazing. So, like, how does it feel on stage now with this new lineup? Like, is it the same energy? Has anything shifted?
I feel like the energy is definitely different. I mean, we've been playing these shows as a 5-piece too. So we have Stevis, who plays in Fever 333, who also we knew him from when he was in the Chariot. So we've known Stevis for like the last 10 years. And then we knew that Stevis was still going to be busy with Fever. So we always had the idea of having another kind of guitar player to kind of like help when Stevis couldn't be there. So our idea originally was like, oh, okay, well, we'll just tour with 5. And then whenever Stevis needs to go, like we can just do it without him. And so originally we had Nick Sherman, who he played guitar on the acoustic EP with us.
Okay.
And he did the Live from Winnipeg stuff with us as well. And he's like a longtime friend from Thunder Bay. So we did 4 shows like around Ontario with him. And he was like, I have a family and I'm kind of too busy for this. So we're like, okay, cool. So then we hit up our friend, Katie Lamond, who lives in Halifax and plays in Like a Motorcycle. Cause we were like, this 5-piece kind of sounds awesome. And it feels really different. And it feels really rad to be like playing shows like this. So we asked Katie, and she learned all the songs in 2 weeks and then came and did that Western Canadian tour. So we were like, yeah, this is kind of the vibe of like having everyone. That being said, Stevis won't be with us next week when we tour because he has Fever shows. He's going to be in Europe with Korn, which is pretty cute. So this next week is just going to be Katie on guitar. But I think we're going to try and do the 5-piece as often as we possibly can because we really love it. Like vibe wise, like just like everyone getting to like, I don't know, just like kind of like party and the song sounding like different and heavy. It just like feels really fun. It's really exciting for us too. It's like we've been playing some songs for like 17 years. So to have now like, you know, different versions, and even like when Wade was in the band, it was different too. So again, it's like kind of like these new like incarnations of the band are really fun for all of us.
I see you very much as a live band. It's one thing to listen to a Cancer Bats record, but seeing you in a room, it takes on a whole new life of its own, right? So, and like you say, you've been touring a long time and you've toured all over the world. Are there any specific shows in that whole time that still stand out in your mind?
I mean, maybe because we just kind of like passed the 10-year mark of it, but I don't know if you were at any of those Pentagram shows that we did in the UK. We did 6 shows in one day in the shape of across.
It was all in London, right?
Yeah, but it was like in the shape of like a pentagram.
Yeah.
They were all like small, like 200 cap shows or smaller, and yeah, we did them all in like basically 12 hours, which was like, it was sick. It was like one of the like gnarliest things I feel like we've ever done, and we'll never do again. But it was just the 10-year anniversary of that. It was like for the release of Dead Son of Living. So, which like there's nothing more living than playing 6 shows in a day. But was there any point during that day where you were like, I'm not sure this is a good idea?
We definitely played. We played at one point, I think show 4, we played like a really mellow set. Like we were like, oh, let's load this one up with like stoner songs and like kind of like our slower jams. And it was cool to like, because normally we mix up the set, but it was cool to have, because there was a lot of kids and like press and people that went to every single show. Right. So everyone seemed to really enjoy the like mellow set as the breather before we did show 5 and 6. But then by the time we were like, we were playing the next one, we were like, oh, we're good. We're back in it. So yeah, it was a really fun, crazy kind of day.
a once in a career kind of day.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not looking to redo it.
What's the biggest show that you guys have done? Because I think every time I've seen you, it's been in like clubs or I think I've seen you at some festivals, but have you like played on the big stages, like opening for bands?
Oh, we've definitely played. Yeah, I was thinking of like our biggest kind of headline. I think Coco in London is probably our biggest headline show. It was like 1,300. I'm pretty sure we sold that out. So I felt like that was pretty good. But yeah, we've definitely played some massive stages, like supporting like Billy Talent and like Alexis on Fire, getting to play like Brixton and stuff, like being main support to Alexis at Brixton, or like even just opening for like Billy Talent on some of their shows where kids show up early. And so we're playing to like 10,000 people, like in like an arena. You're like, oh, this is nuts. But yeah, it's kind of a trip to think about all of that stuff as like the last kind of like 15 years of our career sort of thing.
And you're going to be playing POUZZA Fest coming up. Like, I know you've done that before. Any good memories of that festival? Because it's such a kind of cool festival.
Yeah, I really love the whole like punk kind of like vibe of like taking over the city, and especially like where so much of it centers around like Fufun Electric. Like that's such like a legendary venue too. Like I even remember 20 years ago when I lived in Montreal, like before Cancer Rat started, like seeing shows at Fouf's that were like nuts, you know, like some of the craziest shows I've ever seen. And like even just going there for like skate night and like hanging out and watching like pros like skate the like mini ramp on like Wednesday nights in the middle of the winter. Yeah, that side of things is like, oh, I love that this venue is still as much a part of the like Montreal punk scene as well. So for us to be playing there and to have like, you know, bands like Propagandhi are playing. Sadly, we're going to miss them. We're in Timmins the night before. So we're driving from Timmins all the way down to play that show. But I think our stage is really rad. I'm pretty sure like Dilly Dally's playing our stage, and Cloud Nines and Bad Cop. So there's a bunch of bands that I can't wait to check out. And actually Katie is pulling double duty. She's also going to play with Like a Motorcycle and then come across the street and play with us at Fouf's.
Amazing. I want to talk to you a little bit about your musical journey as far as a music fan is concerned. You know, when we're kids, we always listen to music on the radio and it's just kind of there in the background. Do you remember a moment or a band that changed that and made you take it much more seriously as a fan?
I mean, I grew up, my dad was always like really into music and had like an amazing record collection. So I definitely remember like my dad like playing me like, you know, Allman Brothers and like Jimi Hendrix and AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and all of this stuff. Like I definitely remember like as like I was probably like 4 or 5, like being like, oh, I like Led Zeppelin. Like that's a band that I'm into. And like my parents would listen to some stuff and I'd be like, okay, but we should listen to like Allman Brothers. And my parents like being like, yeah, just put the record on, like go for it. And like that being like something that I felt ownership of. Like I knew what being a fan felt like at that point, because I was like, oh, I like this music. You guys want to listen to Paul Simon? That's great. I'll realize I like Paul Simon later in life. But right now I want to listen.
Me too.
Yeah, I want to listen to like AC/DC and like I'd be 5 like dancing around.
my first ever show was AC/DC when I was a teenager, and my youngest son's first ever show was AC/DC in Montreal.
Oh, amazing. So, yeah, I remember I like definitely grew up going again to like folk festivals and stuff like that with my parents. But I remember one of the earlier, like I used to go to like indie rock shows like when I was a kid. So I remember being like 11 or 12 and we like bought tickets to go see 5440, which is like a Canadian indie rock band. And we showed up and it was at a bar, and the bouncer was just like, you're not supposed to be in here, but you're obviously so young that there's no way that like anyone would serve you a beer. You know what I mean? They were like, you're not allowed to drink beer, but yeah, you're just here for the concert, and we bought tickets. So we figured out this like loophole to be like really young, to be like 12 years old at like these indie rock concerts. So we'd be like, we'd buy our tickets at HMV and then we'd show up. And I think the people at HMV kind of knew that if we had these tickets, we'd be able to get in, or they just didn't care. But I feel like that was like this cool loophole that we like figured out to like go to bars underage. And we would just drink like a Coca-Cola and watch the show and then leave.
Yeah, amazing. So was there a band like that? That's some of the music that your parents were listening to that you liked.
Yeah.
Was there a band that you started to really like? It's kind of around that age that your parents didn't like.
Yeah, I think like once I started getting into punk and stuff like that, so listening to a lot of like skate punk and like NoFX and No Use for a Name and Face to Face and Rancid and all that kind of stuff, that was where my parents were like, oh yeah, like this is your music, like we don't want to listen to this in the car. But they would always like kind of give it a listen. Like I felt like my parents were definitely like into, I don't know if it was like humoring me or just like being curious. So like when we were listening to like tons of like 90s, like East Coast, like hip hop, like my mom would like listen to it and be like, oh, but this like reminds me of jazz that I like. So she'd be like, we should just listen to jazz. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like we're not going to listen to Gang Starr in my mom's car, but we can listen to, you know, like Thelonious Monk or like Herbie Hancock in my mom's car. And that's like kind of like hip hop without any of the MCs. So I was like, that's cool. That's a good compromise.
Yeah, actually, we've just been listening to Gang Starr here because my wife is into a lot of things like De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest and those kind of bands, but she hadn't heard Gang Starr.
Oh, okay.
So I've been introducing her to that, and then the kids are kind of into hip hop. And so, but they're usually more into, actually, they're going through a Notorious B.I.G. phase at the moment, which is cool.
Which is also great.
Yeah, but they hadn't heard anything that was like Gang Starr with that, like, you know, you say with the jazz influence and that kind of cool vibe. And so, yeah, we've been playing that.
Yeah, all that like old DJ Premier stuff, I think is really cool. But yeah, I feel like that was like kind of like my parents being like, oh, this is like we can listen to, you know, like we'll all listen to Van Morrison or whatever when we're driving around, but like you actually like this like hip hop, like East Coast hip hop that we're not into. I'm like, okay, fair.
So when you got to the age where you started thinking about being in a band, was there any bands particular that you were like, I want to be like these guys that influenced you?
I definitely, I mean, I think when I was like first thinking of being in bands, like I originally thought I was going to play drums too. So that was like when I was like 16, I got a drum kit and I was just like trying to play the fastest skate punk that I could. And like that was like, oh, I love Lagwagon. Okay, I'm just gonna try and play like every like Lagwagon beat. And then I was never in a band. Like my first band I ended up singing in. So I was never in a band playing drums. So I like had to quickly shift to be like, oh, nobody needs a drummer in my town, or at least I'm getting offered to sing in bands. And I was like, I guess I'll try that. So I felt like it was like a very quick, like, oh, now I have to figure out like who I want to sound like singing wise. But luckily it was like, my first band was like a ska core band. So we were just listening to like Less Than Jake and like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and like stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I'll just sing with like a fake raspy voice.
But you've got such a distinctive voice. It's such a big part of the Cancer Bat sound, your voice now.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I definitely sang in a lot of different, we start like our ska band played with a bunch of Toronto hardcore bands, Countdown to Oblivion. We played with the Swarm once. And then we were like, okay, we have to break up because we want to be in a hardcore band. So then I was like listening to a lot of stuff. This was like again in the 90s. So I was listening to like Earth Crisis and Strife and Snapcase and, you know, Buried Alive. But also I love like Deftones, and like listening to Quicksand and like bands like that. So we were trying to figure out just like all of these different kind of influences that we could like add into our stuff. So I felt like before I really found my voice, I was like always trying to like just emulate other bands that I really liked. So it was like, oh, I want to sing like Chino, but I also want to like scream like Scott Vogel, or like I want to sound like, you know, Snapcase and like write lyrics like that, but I want them to sound brutal like Jamie from Hatebreed, you know? So it was like, where was the me in that? I felt like that didn't come until I really started Cancer Bats.
Yeah, I can see all those influences kind of converging in the middle to become you.
Yeah. And it took even just like years of, I feel like I didn't really find my voice with Cancer Bats either until like Hail Destroyer. Like right. I felt like that was a point where I could confidently sing those songs without losing my voice. And like, there's no melody in Hail Destroyer yet. So it like would still take a few more albums to like try and carve some of that out. So in a lot of ways, I honestly feel like Spark and like this record are the truest like vision of what I had. Like to be like, oh, I want this to be like powerful, but also melodic. And like, I really didn't feel like I was able to sing like that until we did the like Bat Sabbath stuff. Until like, you know, you kind of like, you think about like how sick Danzig is. Like, I remember we were like so obsessed with Danzig, like writing Bears, Mare, Scraps and Bones, but like I couldn't add any of that into like what I was trying to like sing. So like songs like Darkness Lives, it just like is the closest, or like Black Metal Bicycle. It's like, that's the closest I could get. And then like another 10 years of singing, I'm like, okay, now I can actually like sing those songs.
And you touched again on the Bat Sabbath thing, which is when you were doing just all Black Sabbath songs. You always used to throw in a few Cancer Bat songs at the end, which is always fun.
Yeah.
But learning all those Black Sabbath songs, do you think that changed anything about the way you were writing your own material?
Oh, I think it stepped us up like times 1,000 as songwriters. Like we couldn't have written an album like Dead Set on Living if we hadn't have taken on, it was because it was almost like going to summer school. Like we like went back to like learn from like literally the masters of like metal in terms of like how to like sing, make a guitar and a bass sound completely separate and yet in unison at the same time. And then the idea that like drums can kind of just be also at the same time like all over the place and then super heavy when you need them to be for like the chorus. It was just like, yeah, for all four of us, it was like such a huge learning experience to like take that on. And we didn't think about that at all when we started it, which was kind of the cool part. Like when we were like, oh yeah, we got asked to like learn these Sabbath songs for a festival. It's like, we weren't like, oh man, this is really gonna like expand our minds and like make us better musicians. We were like, sick, we'll do this and it'll be fun. And then we like quickly had to like learn and like figure it out.
Yeah. But it sounded amazing, and for some reason it fits with you as a band really well.
Yeah, it really kind of like, I think it also opened our band up to a lot of people understanding that we're more metal than we were hardcore in a lot of ways. I feel like that, again, like people knew us as like the band that covers Sabotage and that does like this and that. And then it was like, oh, but you guys also have like a real appreciation for metal. And I felt like we started getting like invited to more things and tours and stuff like that. Like we toured with, you know, Devil Driver and Guar and, you know, like more metal kind of things. And I was like, oh yeah.
What about new music? Do you still pay attention to new music that's coming up?
Yeah, I think, I mean, especially for heavy music right now, there's so many rad bands and so much like cool, inspiring stuff that's like happening. So yeah, I feel like right now we're like, I don't know, I don't want to call it like a golden age of hardcore, but it just feels like there's a lot of like really interesting, like cool and diverse, like sort of bands that are coming out. Like that new Turnstile, I think, is awesome and is gonna like get a lot of people like into hardcore. But I also think like bands like Gel and Spy and Gulch and Bib and all these one word bands, like there's so much like cool sort of stuff happening within like underground hardcore in the UK, like Witch Fever, XL Life, bands like Big Cheese, like such like a wide array of like cool kind of underground hardcore that's happening. And then I also think that like older bands like, you know, Terror just put out like a really amazing record. The new Comeback Kid is awesome. Like I think like all of these bands that have been around for a long time who are also still stepping up their game, I think is just like really great for the scene in general.
Yeah, but nobody listens to heavy music all the time. So what do you listen to when you just want to chill out?
I mean, I listen to tons of jazz, especially when I'm like doing like art and things like that. I have like there's like a Spotify like playlist if you just type in North African jazz, and I'll just like listen to North African jazz like for hours. So when I'm not listening to like tons of hardcore, I'm listening to North African jazz.
You're back out on the road. You're going to be coming to Montreal for POUZZA. And then what's your summer looking like?
We actually have the summer off. So my summer is going to be skateboarding, riding dirt bikes, riding my motorcycle to go camping. We're just going to hang out.
That sounds good.
Achieved like balance, I think, in life.
Absolutely. And then what about looking further afield than that? Like, have you got more tour plans after the summer?
Yeah, as the world kind of like continues to open up and things like keep happening, we have tours booked for the UK in the fall. We're gonna be going out again to like more, I think, Eastern Canada, stuff like that, and then hopefully going to Europe like in 2023, going to Australia, all those places that we love. So yeah, still lots of world to be touring.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it's good to see Cancer Bats out doing what they do best. And we look forward to
I agree.
We look forward to seeing you guys when you get back to Montreal in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait for POUZZA. It's going to be amazing. I just wish we were there the whole weekend, but sometimes you got to gig. Sometimes you got to play Timmins, you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Shows all of Montreal should really just be in Timmins because they're the ones missing out.
Well, thanks very much for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I'll try and find you and say hi when you're at POUZZA.
Yeah, I'll see you at Foof's.
Yeah.
Or at the pizza place across the street after we're done. That's my after party.
Okay, cool.
Pizza shop. That's my favorite part.
Nice.
Big man. Well, thanks again.
Right.
And we'll see you in a week.